Hello everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be in today, so I know your study guides are due, so what I'm going to do is make a recording of me going over every single question on the study guide. Now, you don't need to listen to this entire video. I would recommend just kind of skipping through to the questions that you got incorrect on your study guide and watching me go over those particular questions. Like I said, you don't need to watch the entire thing unless, of course, you got all 20 questions wrong. Okay, so we're going to start with number 1. We were asked to simplify the expression, and we're going to start by distributing. So I'm going to distribute my positive 4. So 3a stays as is. 4 times a negative 5a gives us negative 20a. So I'm going to write that as minus 20a. And then 4 times a positive 3 gives us a positive 12. Next, we want to combine our like terms. I have a positive 3a and a negative 20a, which leaves me with negative 17a, different signs, so we subtract. And there's nothing else I can do with my plus 12, so that just stays as is, which means our final answer is negative 17a plus 12. Okay, number 2, we have a negative 4 that needs to get distributed. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 8 is a positive 32. And then plus 6x minus 3, I'm just going to leave as is. We can combine our negative 4x and our positive 6x, which leaves us with a positive 2x. And then we have a positive 32 and a negative 3. Those are different signs, so we subtract, and we have more positives than negatives. So that leaves us with a positive 29, making our final answer 2x plus 29. Okay, moving on to number 3. We have a negative in front of our parentheses. Remember, the negative still gets distributed. So f stays as is. The negative times 3f gives me negative 3f. Remember, it just turns everything to its opposite. And then my minus 6 then becomes a plus 6. I can combine my f and my negative 3f, different signs, so we subtract, and we have more negatives. Remember, when you have a variable by itself, it's understood that there's a 1 there. So really, we're doing 3 minus 1, which is 2, and we have more negatives than positives. There's nothing I can do with my plus 6, so that just goes on the end, making our answer negative 2f plus 6. Okay, moving along to number 4, we have a negative 2 that's going to get distributed, and then we also have a positive 2 here that gets distributed. So let's start on the left. Negative 2 times negative 5g is positive 10g. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. And then we've got a positive 2 times a negative 4g, which gives me negative 8g. And positive 2 times positive 1 gives us a positive 2. Let's combine our like terms. We have 10g and negative 8g, which leaves me with 2g. And then we have a positive 4 and a positive 6, positive 4 and a positive 2, which leaves us with positive 6, making our final answer 2g plus 6. Okay, moving on to number 5. We have some decimals here, so we have to be careful with our operations. We have distribution as well. So I'm going to leave 2.4p as is, and now I'm going to multiply 3 times 1.1p off to the side, which leaves me with 3.3p. And then we also have a 3 times a negative 4.1, so off to the side, I'm going to multiply 4.1 times 3. And that gives us a negative 12.3, so minus 12.3. Let's combine like terms. We have a positive 2.4p and a positive 3.3. So down here, I'm just going to line up my decimals and add those two together. They're both positives. So that leaves us with a positive 6.7, or sorry, I added that wrong, positive 5.7. 4 plus 3 is 7, 2 plus 3 is 5. So that leaves us with 5.7p. And then our minus 12.3 I can't do anything with, so that stays as is, which makes our answer 5.7p minus 12.3. Now, if you have this written as 5.7p plus negative 12.3, that's also correct. All right, let's take a look at number 6. We had some fractions involved here, so let's take it slow. 3/5 is going to stay as is. I'm going to multiply 1/3 times 2 over 1, which leaves me with 2 over 3. So that's going to be plus 2/3 x. And then we have 1/3 times 1, which is just 1/3. And then we have plus 1/3 x on the end. Let's combine like terms. We have a positive 2/3 x and a positive 1/3 x. Well, 2/3 plus 1/3 is 3/3, or 1x. And then here we've got a positive 3/5 and a positive 1/3. So those have different denominators. So I'm just going to set up a fraction operation problem down here. We have to find a common denominator, which is 15. To get from 5 to 15, we're multiplying by 3, which gives me 9 in our numerator. And over here, to get from 3 to 15, we're multiplying by 5, which gives me 5 in my numerator. Just fix my 9 so it looks more like a 9. And so that leaves us with 9 over 15 plus 5 over 15, which is 14 over 15. So that leaves us with 1x plus 14 over 15. And remember, you don't need to have that 1 in front of your variable, so our final answer is just going to be x plus 14/15. Now, obviously, I wouldn't mark you wrong if you had a 1 in front of your variable, but you don't need to have that there. It's understood that if there's no number, that it's understood that it's a 1. Okay, let's move on to the second page. These were your distributive property problems where you had to factor out your greatest common factor. So remember, with these, we want to look for the GCF between 30 and 90, which in this case is 30. So that goes outside your parentheses, and then we divide both terms by 30. 30x divided by 30 leaves me with 1x, or just x by itself. Subtraction stays the same, and 90 divided by 30 gives us 3. For number 8, we're looking for our GCF for 36 and 81, which is 9. So that goes on the outside of our parentheses. 36D divided by 9 is 4D. And 81 divided by 9 is 9. So that would be your final answer there. Okay, moving along to number 9. These are your equivalent expressions problems. My suggestion for these is to simplify the expression given first and then go from there. So I've got a negative 2y and a positive 4y, which leaves me with a positive 2y minus 8. So simplified, that's what we're looking for. Option A, I'm going to distribute. Negative 2 times y is negative 2y, and negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Plus 4y, and again, when I combine my like terms, that leaves me with 2y minus 8. So A looks good. Now we just have to distribute for B and see if that works also. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 4 times y is 4y. The only thing I can combine here is negative 2 and negative 8. So that would leave me with 4y minus 10. So that means that A is the only correct answer choice for number 9. Okay, here for number 10, we have a negative 3 that needs to get distributed. Let's do that in blue. So that's going to leave me with negative p. Negative 3 times 5p is negative 15p. And negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. When I combine my like terms, that leaves us with negative 16p plus 6. So taking a look, I can see that B is definitely correct. A, there's no way that we're going to get a negative 14p. So the only one that worked here was option B. Okay, halfway through, let's go to number 11. We had to distribute our negative 1/2. Don't make this harder than it is. So we have a negative times a positive, which is a negative, and half of 6m is 3m. Next, we've got a negative times a negative, which gives us a positive. And again, half of 6 is 3. So we are looking for a simplified expression of negative 3m plus 3, which I can see A works, but let's distribute for B and see what we get. Negative 3 times m is negative 3m, and negative 3 times negative 1 is a positive 3. So I can see here that both of these would be equivalent expressions. So C was the correct choice. And then the last one on this page was number 12. Again, we need to distribute. I've got a negative 1/4 times a negative 2/3. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. And 1/4 times 2/3 is going to leave me with, once I do my cross simplifying, a positive 1/6 q. And then we have a negative 1/4 times a negative 2. Again, a negative times a negative is a positive. And then when I cross simplify, that's going to leave me with a positive 1/2. So we're looking for a positive 1/6 q plus 1/2. I can see that A does not work because it's plus 1/4. However, let's take a look at B. We've got like terms. We've got a 1/4 and a 1/4 that we can add together, which leaves me with 2/4, which simplifies to equal 1/2. So really what we have here is 1/6 q plus 1/2, which means that it matches and is an equivalent expression. So that would be correct. So B would be the correct answer for number 12. All right, moving on to the third page, number 13. Again, we had a couple of terms that we needed to combine, but first we want to do our distribution step. So I'm distributing a negative 2. So 0.2w stays as is. Negative 2 times 3w is negative 6w. Negative 2 times negative 1 is a positive 2. And minus 3.1 stays the same. I can combine my positive 0.2w and my negative 6w. So they're different signs, which means we're going to subtract. So 6 minus 0.2 leaves us with a negative 5.8w. And then here we have a positive 2 and a negative 3.1. So let's do that in red. Again, different signs, so we're going to subtract. 3.1 minus 2. I have more negatives than positives. So that's going to leave us with a negative 1.1. So I'm going to write that as minus 1.1. So that means our final answer would be negative 5.8w minus 1.1. And of course, if you have that written as negative 5.8w plus negative 1.1, that would also be correct. All right. Notice that we have parentheses here, but you have no number in front of your parentheses. So nothing's really being distributed in this case. So I'm just going to start by combining my like terms. I have a negative x and a positive 1/2 x. So that means we're adding negative 1 plus 1/2. Different signs, so we subtract. And that leaves us with more negatives than positives, and 1 minus 1/2 is a negative 1/2. Okay, next we're going to combine our like terms. I'm going to do that in green. We have a positive 2/5 and a positive 2. So if I add 2 plus 2/5, that actually leaves me with 2 and 2/5, but we're going to write it as an improper fraction. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 gives me 12 over 5. So plus 12 over 5, and that's our simplified answer. So our answer would be negative 1/2 x plus 12 over 5. Moving on to number 15, this is where we start our solving our equations. Remember, when we have multi-step equations, we do need to distribute first. So we're going to start by distributing that negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 5r gives me a positive 15r. And negative 3 times negative 4 gives me a positive 12. Next, we want to combine like terms. We have a positive 6 and a positive 12. So that leaves us with 15r plus 18. equals 32. And now it's in a two-step equation format, so we're just going to follow those steps. Eliminate your constant. So we're going to subtract 18 on both sides. 15r equals, well, if we subtract here, we end up with 14. And then to get r by itself, since this is multiplication, we're going to do the opposite, which is division. It's going to cancel on the left, and that leaves us with our answer of r equals 14 over 15. Always check your fractions to make sure they are simplified. In this case, it is. So that is our final answer. Okay, let's take a look at number 16. We have a -4 in front that's getting distributed. So I'm just going to leave 13 equals 8 as is, and now let's start distributing. -4 times -3g is a positive 12g, and -4 times a positive 7 is -28. Again, we want to combine like terms first. I have a positive 8 and a -28, which leaves us with -20. Different signs, so we subtract and we have more negatives. So now that leaves us with 13 equals 12g minus 20. My constant is 20, so we're going to do the opposite operation, which is addition. That leaves me with 33 equals 12g. And then my last step is to divide through by 12 on both sides. So that's going to leave us with g equals 33 over 12. However, both of these numbers are divisible by 3. So that means that our simplified answer is going to be g equals, well, 33 divided by 3 is 11, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So our final answer would be 11/4. Okay, moving on to the last page. We had a few more equations here. So again, we want to eliminate our constant first. I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. That leaves us with -7/3 m equals -7 minus 2. Be careful, keep change, leaves us with a -9. And then hopefully we all remember by now that in order to get rid of my fraction as my coefficient, I need to multiply by the reciprocal. So watch what I do. I'm going to multiply by -3 over 7. What we do on one side, we do to the other. All of this is going to cancel out. I've got a negative times a negative, leaving me with a positive variable. And here we have a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive. If I were to put 9 over 1, there's nothing I can do to cross simplify, so we're just simply going to multiply our numerators and our denominators. 9 times 3 is 27, 1 times 7 is 7, and that leaves us with our final answer of m equals 27 over 7. Okay, for 18, my constant is 1/3, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is subtraction. What we do to one side, we do to the other. Cancels out there. Remember, -2 minus 1/3, if I keep change, becomes plus -1/3, which leaves me with -2 and 1/3, which again, we'll write that as an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is -7/3. So that leaves us with -7/3 equals -3/4 r, and just like with the last problem, we have a fraction as our coefficient. So to get rid of -3/4, I'm going to multiply by -4/3 on both sides. All this cancels out, leaving us with a positive r. And then again, we can't do any cross simplifying here. Negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 7 is 28, and 3 times 3 is 9. So that leaves us with our final answer of r equals 28 over 9. I cannot simplify that, so that's my final answer. Okay, moving on to the last two problems on the study guide. Numbers 19 and 20. I had to be a little bit careful because there were some decimals involved. So first thing we want to do for 19 is distribute our -3. -3 times -2h is a positive 6h. Here we have a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive. And then just down here, I'm going to do my operation. 2.2 times 3 leaves us with 6.6. So plus 6.6 equals 18. Now we're in a two-step equation format. My constant is 6.6, so I'm going to subtract that on both sides. Be careful here. Remember, when we add and subtract with decimals, we need to line them up. So we have to do a little bit of borrowing. So that's going to leave us with a positive 11.4. Just move this over a little bit. And now to get h by itself, to get rid of that 6, we're going to divide both sides by 6. Down here, I'm just going to set up my division problem because it does say to answer as a decimal. 6 goes into 11 one time. We get a remainder of 5. Bring your 4 down. And 6 goes into 54 9 times. So that leaves us with our final answer of h equals a positive 1.9. And then the last problem, my constant is 2.8. So to get rid of it, we're going to add 2.8 on both sides. Be careful here because we're adding a negative and a positive, which means we actually subtract them. And I have more positives than negatives. So that leaves us with 4f equals 1.2. And then we're going to divide both sides by 4 to get f by itself. If you're not good with your mental math, just set up a division problem. 4 can't go into 1, but it goes into 12 3 times. So that leaves us with our final answer of f equals 0.3. Again, it did specify to write your answer as a decimal, so please make sure you're following the directions. And that does it for the study guide. If you have any additional questions, please mark it on your study guide, and I will go over it on Monday before we start our quiz. Have a great weekend, everyone.